Okay, let's bring on our first guest. He is the former head coach of the Edmonton Oilers. He is a former assistant coach with the Stanley Cup winning Detroit Red Wings, former assistant coach with the San Jose Sharks. So, we're going to get some Joe Thornton stories here. And he spent the last 12 months or so canvassing the globe to learn about coaching. He is Jay Woodcroft, and he joins me now on the sheet. Jay, thanks so much for stopping by today. How are you? And I want to jump in quickly as we welcome you aboard. I love the Christmas motif behind you. First of all, let us know, like, the last 12 months for you have been fascinating. Where have you gone and what have you learned?
Well, hi, Jeff. First, thanks for having me on. It's an honor to be on your first show, and I wish you great luck in this new venture.
Thanks.
This last 12 months has been a time for me to get better. Essentially, that's what I've tried to do. I look at having the time that I've had as almost a form of wealth, and I want to make sure I use my time wisely. And I think the first thing I tried to do was reflect, spend some time with your family, try and figure out ways to get better. I was made sure that I wasn't full of negativity. I don't find myself to be a resentment collector. I wanted to find the good in what had happened, and rather than getting bitter, I wanted to use the adversity as a way to get better. And that's what I think you're referencing there. I went over to Europe in February of last year. I spent some time with two different organizations, and all I did was hang around the coaches' room and enjoyed having a coffee, listening to how other people approach different problems. I watched some games, and it was really enjoyable. I came back. And then was asked to go over back to Europe for the World Championships, which was a great experience. Anytime you go over with the people that run Hockey Canada and Scott Salmon, his staff there, and then certainly Andre Tournier, who was the head coach. It was a fantastic experience. You learn a lot about people, a lot about the players that go over there. And I know I got better in that situation. And then, heading into this year and this summer, not having a team to go to in September was new to me. It's not something that I think I've ever had. Going back to when I played minor hockey as a kid, I always had a team to go to in September. So I wanted to make sure that I was, as I said, using my time wisely. I went to Europe, and they had the opening of the NHL season in Prague, Czech Republic. Had an opportunity to talk to a lot of coaches over there, talk to the coach that I used to be, and offer any insights and benefits of my experience to these people that were trying to get better over there. And I got to watch the first two games of the year. But as you mentioned, I went to Philadelphia for training camp. I didn't go on the ice. I actually made a point of sitting in the stands and just kind of watching. And what that allowed me to do, first of all, I'm very thankful that John Tortorella invited me to come and so that I could watch and see how somebody else does something. But I liked the fact that someone who's very well known for having these very intense, hard training camps that are legendary in NHL circles, I got to see firsthand, and it spawned a whole bunch of ideas in my head. And I know that, I took some good notes, and I'm fortunate that John invited me to go over there, and I know I got better during that trip as well.
Jay, one of the coaches that I really admire in junior hockey, coach of the Kitchener Rangers, UC Ahokas. And there's a great video on the coach's site about him talking about positionless hockey and the future of the game, etc. I'm curious, when you traveled around Europe, like what were a couple of your sort of main takeaways? Anything profoundly different that you can share with us?
Well, it's a different game. It's not the NHL. The skill level is not the same. The stakes aren't the same. The payrolls aren't the same. But there's a lot of really good hockey people, and those people are looking for solutions that might be a little bit different problems that you find in the NHL in terms of tactics and whatnot. But when I go to Europe, I'm always enamored by the rhythm of the game. You don't see a lot of straight ahead, stop and start hockey. Teams play on the move. They build offenses on the move. And, I think anytime national team goes over to play in Europe on the bigger ice surface, that's always something that needs to be discussed and find ways to beat it. And like I said, I got to spend some quality minutes with great hockey people in both Finland and Switzerland. And I'm thankful for both of those organizations. They were both at different points in their year. And like I said, just having a coffee in a coach's room, it really brightened my day. And I know I got better.
With Jay Woodcroft. Jay, I want to ask you about something, and I mentioned this off the top of the show. And every couple of days, it sort of raises its head, and some people throw their hands in the air and say, "Oh, they're just making this up as they go along." But I really, I try my best to understand why calls are made, and I'm getting to goalie interference here. I'm
Okay.
curious at the NHL level, like as a coach, when you see goalie interference live, real time, and you watch it on the iPad, what are the sort of the boxes that you're looking to check before you decide on I'm going to appeal this or not?
Yeah, you know what? I thought in listening to your introduction, you did a really good job of that, explaining about whether you're in the blue or outside the blue. That's like a critical point right there. But for me, in my experience as the head coach in Edmonton, we spent a lot of time in the off season working on projects. And what I meant about that is just studying the calls that have been made throughout the previous season or previous seasons to try and get a better handle on the decision makers' reasonings for decisions. And as new ones would pop up during a season, uh, always spent time with our coaching staff discussing it. And I was very fortunate. I had what I felt was the best video coach in the league, and I've had some good ones. In other places, I had Brett Heimlich, who works in Colorado. I had Sam Kim, who works in Toronto, and these guys are stars. They're unbelievable. But I felt that I had the best video coach in the league with Jeremy Kupal, and we had a system in place that if there was ever one of those situations would arise, we had a protocol. We followed that protocol strictly. We adhered to it, and we trusted our instinct. And as a result, we did pretty well on when to challenge or when not to challenge, but a lot of that came down to his expertise and the protocols that we put in place to make sure that we were making clear-headed decisions, not emotional ones.
A couple of other things in the game right now that I want to get your thoughts on, and then I want to talk about winning the Stanley Cup in Detroit. I want to talk about
Sure.
some Edmonton things as well. I want to talk about Jumbo in San Jose. It was a beautiful ceremony for him a couple of weeks ago. I always used to make the joke, Jay. There's only two places that do ceremonies well. One is Buckingham Palace, and the other is the Bell Center. But man, San Jose just like hit it out of the park with that Joe Thornton ceremony. But I want to get your thoughts on attention to detail and Connor McDavid. Now, when I was doing the pod with Elliot, we sat down with you a couple of different times, and there's one thing that you said that always really stuck with me, and I've always referenced it. And we're talking about McDavid, and you stopped us and you said, look, one thing we need to all remember is don't be numb to what we're seeing. Like, I grew up, watching Wayne Gretzky, and I look back now and I'm like, how was I not more impressed? Like, he was impressive. It's Wayne Gretzky, it's incredible things, but I don't know that the full gravity sank in while I was watching it. And you said to us, you said, don't be numb to this. Like, what we're seeing is great. Like, can you expand on that? And also, and I'm thinking of tiny little things like offsides, like things that McDavid pays such attention to that mere mortals probably wouldn't.
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously his talent is elite, and it was special to be able to coach him for the years that I was able to coach. And that year in particular, when we sat down, I think he was on his way to 160 points in the Hart Trophy, and what he was doing was extremely special. But I think when you discuss those elite talents, and I'm very fortunate because I've been around some in Detroit and San Jose, and certainly in Edmonton's organization. But I think what doesn't get talked about enough is their character and the amount of work that they put in to be as great as they are. We're talking about the 0.01% of the 1%.
Mm-hmm.
And you talked about being detail oriented, and earlier you were talking about challenges and everything like that. And one time I can remember with Connor was, certainly in NHL pregame skates, everyone kind of finishes their practice with two-on-one drill where a goalie split and regroup and go back two-on-one. It's quite common in the NHL. And it would always drive him mad when some younger players would just, in order to keep the rhythm of the drill, they would go a little bit offside into their two-on-one. And he didn't understand why. And as I started to watch, he made a real point of dragging his foot to never be offside. And then sure enough, a few games later, I think there was a disputed offside goal where it was him on a two-on-one. He dragged his leg and the other team challenged and maybe didn't have the proper protocol in place, but he was onside and looked back at me and said, "That's why you drag your leg on those pregame skate two-on-ones."
It's interesting. Wayne Gretzky used to always say it's the most selfish play in hockey, the offside. And I'm sure you probably saw the exact same thing with McDavid. It's sloppy and it's not fair to everybody else. Accurate?
Yeah, I think so. It's just like saying to some people, sometimes not shooting the puck is selfish. And, in certain situations, you want to make sure you don't want to kill offense. Offense is hard enough to come by in the league, and to be on a two-on-one and not have that attention to detail to make sure that you're dragging a foot or being extra careful in that situation, to me is, it shouldn't just be the hallmark of the greats like Connor.
Here's a more of a philosophical question for you, but I know you think like this. You're a thinker of the game and a student of the game. Do you find that, because if you look in your past, like McDavid and Draisaitl, 13, 40, and 5 in Detroit, Jumbo in San Jose, do you find that coaches that coach superstar players don't get as much credit as coaches that don't have superstar players in their lineup? Like, is that a thing amongst coaches? Is that a thing in the NHL?
I've never thought of it actually, but you raising it makes me think of it. I look at coaching the players that I've coached as a real privilege. They're as I said, they're the 0.01% of the 1%. They get you out of bed in the morning with ways to find motivation for them. My experience around those greats is that they all wanted some kernel of information or tactic that was going to push them to reach their full potential and the team's full potential. Like I said earlier, they're all elite talents, elite talents, but they're great people. They're character people, and they're driven to be their best. And as a coach in the NHL, I don't worry so much about who gets credit for what. I certainly put my focus on trying to get the most out of the team on a day-to-day basis and try and help whatever team I coach pursue its potential.
Let me fire a couple of quick ones at you here from your past. There used to be a saying around the NHL that if you're going to win the Stanley Cup on the road, this is the old Pittsburgh arena. If you're going to win the Stanley Cup on the road, don't win it in Pittsburgh because the visitor dressing room is tiny. But you guys did in Pittsburgh. What was I was always told that there was like the tiny room celebration, and then the Ilitch family got everyone on the charter as fast as they could to get back to Detroit. Take us back to winning the Cup as a Red Wing in Pittsburgh in tiny rooms.
Wow, first of all, what a thrill. It's a dream come true for any hockey person to raise that trophy over your head. And, you go through the ceremony and the pomp and circumstance, and families come on the ice, and then you go into the dressing room afterwards, and it's absolute mayhem in the greatest way possible. But what I'll always remember about that team, but specifically about winning the Cup, was not all of that stuff. It was kind of when everybody got cleared out of that small room. The trainers, the coaches, the players all kind of made their way back to a little portion of that room, a trainer's room. And we were all together, and it was great. You were sitting having unbelievable conversations. There were a few adult beverages being had, and people were relishing in the accomplishment of winning the Stanley Cup. And it was funny because after a while, with everybody in that small room, they realized that the Stanley Cup wasn't in the room with that group of people. And out of nowhere, just like 8-year-olds who had won a novice hockey tournament, everybody started chanting, "We want the cup, we want the cup." And it got louder and louder. And eventually someone brought the cup in through the threshold of the doorway and got showered with champagne, and everyone was having a good time, hooting and hollering. And for me, that was really fun to see, these men who behaving like little kids and remembering why everybody plays hockey is to win the big trophy, win your last game of the year. But for me, what was really cool was when we were all in there with the cup, they turned some music on, and it could have been "We Are the Champions." I can't even remember what the songs were, but I'll always remember that the cup got passed from individual to individual. And it didn't matter if you were Nicholas Lidstrom, the captain of the team. It didn't matter if you were Chris Capetto, the assistant equipment manager at the time, or Pete Van Zandt, the head athletic therapist, or one of the coaches. It didn't matter who received that cup. As soon as that person received the cup with the music in the background, they raised the cup over their head, and a huge roar emanated from that room. And everybody cheered everyone individually in that moment. And that's something that I'll always remember. And I can tell you that in my career in hockey, that's a moment that I continue to chase. I'm chasing that feeling. Again, it's what drives you. It's your motivational fuel. It's what, as I said, gets you out of bed in the morning, is trying to recreate that moment. And that certainly was a special one in Detroit. And I have another special one I want to tell you about too.
Sure.
I coached a team in the American Hockey League during the pandemic, where I had that feeling again. And our team in Bakersfield, it was a unique time. It was a shortened season. We were in a unique situation because our team was separated from our parent club by an international border. So there wasn't movement between players. I think the big club had 28 players or so, and we were just kind of off on our own and doing our thing against a division that had a lot of natural advantages, because teams were, the American League team and the NHL team were in the same facility. They could move players up and down. And we started that year 0-5. And then we came out of it. I think we won 9 games in a row. We've ended up getting to second place during the regular season. And as the regular season wore down, there was a dispute between the league and some of the owners and players of whether there should be a playoff played. And eventually that dispute got settled. But the big factor was because, there wasn't bonuses for the players and whatnot. And as I said, it got settled and ended up our division played playoffs. And, I'll never forget that we played the Anaheim Ducks Farm Club, who came into our building to play a series. And, their parent club hadn't made the playoffs. So they'd sent down all these young NHLers like Zegras and Drysdale and Dostal and these types of guys, Sam Carrick. And they're a great team. And we won that playoff series. But we won having never led for a minute of the series. We won our games in overtime, which was a really unique. Yeah, it was a unique thing. But I think it spoke to the people that we had on that team. But from there, we went into Las Vegas to play Vegas's Farm Club in T-Mobile Arena. And I won't bore you with the details of the series, but it came down to the final game, and we ended up winning. We came out on the right end of it by a goal. It was great. 15,000 people at T-Mobile Arena. We go into the dressing room afterward, and I'll forever keep that memory of that team and how special they were. And the reason is because they were playing for the right reason. They were playing for each other. They were a team that was so strong in their relationships that they refused to cut corners or take shortcuts. And it was a victory that was really, really driven out of camaraderie. And now when I think of that situation in Bakersfield, that group that won, and then that team that won in Detroit, I understand, how getting the relationships right, getting the people side of the business right is so very important. For me, hockey's a game played by people, coached by people, managed by people. You have to get your people processes right. And those are lessons that I'll take from those two teams as I move forward in my coaching career.
I got time for a couple more, and I want to ask
Sure.
you. I want to ask you about your favorite hockey story ever. But before we get there, I always bang this drum about you is that you're constantly in a process of learning. Like you embrace it. Like that's who Jay Woodcroft is. For the next team that you coach, who/what are they getting in Jay Woodcroft now?
Well, I think they're getting someone that is young. I'm 48 years old. Yet I've been in the league for coming on 20 years here, and have had a unique set of experiences. Obviously, came through Red Wings University at a time
Yeah.
when a lot of coaches came through there and had the resources available to us. And I'm not just talking the ability to talk with Ken Holland and Jim Nill and Scotty Bowman, but the players that were there that I was able to learn from was amazing. Then spent 7 good years in San Jose with great players and great people. I'll forever remember my time there. It's where my kids were born. And then, 9 years in the Edmonton Oilers organization, wearing all different types of hats. I was an assistant coach, head coach in the American League, head coach in the NHL, coming up when the team was in some difficulty out of the playoffs halfway through a year. I think there were 30 odd games left. And we were able to have the success that we were able to have. But for me, it comes down to the relationships that you build along the way. And I know you mentioned it. The work that I was able to do here over the last little while has really set me up. It forces you to refine what your core beliefs are. It helps you learn from different people. And, I'm excited about bringing those communication skills and the things I've learned into my next opportunity.
Okay, you mentioned Ken Holland there a second ago. Okay, I want to freestyle one here.
Sure.
Is it true that when you were coaching the Oilers, when you were in Tampa, if you guys had bad line changes, Scotty Bowman would reach out and give you crap? I mean, he had those Habs in the 70s practicing line changes like crazy. He was the master of the line change. Is it true that Scotty Bowman would reach out to both you and Holland to give you crap for bad line changes?
Yeah, that's true. Scotty was a stickler for good line changes, and that was something that was
Huh.
a focal point of our team in Edmonton, and we try to improve on. And we weren't perfect. Certainly, there were times where you get caught with a tough line change, and you get a scoring chance against, or even you can get victimized by teams quick upping it. And it was always a focal point. Anytime we went through Tampa, that Scotty would be sure to either get to Ken or myself. And I'll tell you what, I learned something great at the World Championships from Andre Tournier, who's a fantastic coach. And
Mm.
what he would say in that situation to make sure that you don't get quick upped or victimized on a poor change, that type of thing. He had a great term that he said was keep one dog in the fight. Always keep one dog in the fight. One dog in the fight. And I know I'm stealing that from him as I move forward.
I love it. Okay, so what I want to do with every guest, and we're going to kick it off with you, is share with us your favorite hockey story of all time. Mine involves the Flyers, who have been 74-75. The legendary and late Fred Shiro is the head coach, one of my favorite coaches. I'll get into that in another program. Is the coach of the Philadelphia Flyers. They're the best team in the NHL. They march into Pittsburgh, who were awful at that time on a Saturday, and get scotched like 6-2 or something like that. And the Flyers are awful. And the next day at practice, not a single puck hits the ice. Jay, it's down and back, down and back, down and back. Tongues are hanging out. The guys get into the room after, and Fred walks in. And Fred says, he's looking at the guys, and he says, like, I heard you coming off the ice yesterday. You made a contribution. I made a contribution on my shift. I did something on my shift. I made a contribution on that shift. And he goes to the board, and he draws a plate, and he draws 3 strips of bacon, and he draws 2 eggs. And he says, gentlemen, this is what I had for breakfast this morning, and this is what I expect out of all of you as Philadelphia Flyers. The guy's looking around the room like, what's Freddie going on about here? Like, because Freddie finally lost it. And he goes, you tell me about your contributions and what you did in that game last night. And he points to the board and he said, on my plate this morning, the chicken made a contribution, but the pig made a commitment. And that's what I expect out of you as a Philadelphia Flyer. That is, hands down, Jay, my favorite hockey story. And Fred's got a million stories like that about Fred. Jay, what is your favorite hockey story?
Wow. First of all, that's an unbelievable story.
Use it. Take it.
Yeah, I'm going to steal it. I'm stealing that one. But, it's hard to think of, just one. But you were mentioning Joe Thornton a little bit earlier, and I have some good stories from Joe. And, when he got feted the other day in San Jose, and they did such a great job. It brought those stories to mind, and I was telling a few friends of mine, some of the things, and one of the stories that I always love, because Joe, in my opinion, is a true character in the game, in the same way Fred Shero is a true character in the game, and obviously he's had a Hall of Fame career, but just a Hall of Fame person as well. He approached every day with like an enthusiasm and a sense of humor that I felt was infectious, and you spoke to me every day in terms of how to come to the rink with some juice, and there's so many of his, but I'll go to this one. I think it was early in my time in San Jose. We had a young, wide-eyed rookie come up to the team, and it was his first experience in the NHL, and he's a little bit naive, and Jumbo kind of adopted those guys. He took them in and was really friendly with them and whatnot. And I think, as it was said in his jersey retirement, he loved to give people nicknames. And so he decided to call this young, wide-eyed rookie Meat, as in meathead, kind of like Kevin Costner's character did in Bull Durham to Tim Robbins' character in the movie Bull Durham. He called the guy Meat, and so you call him Meat all the time, and it was like a running joke and whatnot. Then one time, I think we were in Ottawa, and a few players, after the pregame skate, they kind of go back to the pregame meal early on their own before the bus, and I think Jumbo had a lot to do with this, but I know when I went back to the pregame meal, it's in these beautiful hotel. All the food is labeled. You got steak, you got fish, you have Caesar salad, and you come to the pasta and different types of pasta. And you came to the sauce option, and sure enough, there's the Alfredo sauce listed. There's the marinara sauce, and the third sauce was this player's last name and sauce. So that was the meat sauce.
Meat sauce.
And that kind of grew on its own. And, I just love that story, because that's who he was. He wasn't doing it to push anyone away. He was doing it to pull people in. And, certainly, he was a joy to be around, and he deserves all the attention and well wishes that he got on that weekend. And I'm sure the next step for him will be in Toronto at the Hockey Hall of Fame one day.
Oh, that's an absolute no-brainer. Jay, this has been great. Thanks so much for stopping by. Listen, success on the coaching hunt. Listen, you've taken over teams mid-season before and helped turn them around, and taken them to the conference final. You did that with Edmonton. We wish you all the best this season and beyond, and we'll check back regularly. Thanks, pal.
Thanks, Jeff. Good luck with this new venture. I appreciate it.
If you enjoyed that video, and we certainly hope that you do, please hit the subscribe button right there here at Daily Faceoff. I will put this lineup up against any hockey lineup anywhere. It all gets underway at 9 o'clock Eastern with Morning Cup of Hockey. That is Johnny Lazarus. That is Colby Cohen. Then at noon, it's DFO Live. And then 3 o'clock Eastern, The Sheet. Get caught up on everything in hockey.